My F50 daughter-in-law, 24F, gave birth and doesn't seem to want a relationship with me, making it difficult to have a relationship with my son, 31M, and new granddaughter. Trigger warning, preeclampsia. My son, David, 31, has been married to my daughter-in-law, B, 24, since September of 2020. Due to the pandemic, I never really got to know her, because they only dated for about a year before they got married, and I didn't know about her until they had dated for about 6 months. I love my son very much, but I feel like our relationship has been rocky since they get married. He has a daughter from a previous relationship who is 10, and since they got together I haven't had the same relationship with her. I know this is partially because he moved out of my house, very suddenly without really saying anything, I may add, and I no longer get her on his weekends. I try to get them to bring her to visit when they have her, but usually I only see her once a month or so, and lately it has felt like she has been more distant when she visits. I think this is because B says negative things about me around her, and I find that unfair. They just had a baby at the end of January. She was induced due to preeclampsia and in labor for 3 days before having a C-section. I had been in an accident a few weeks prior and don't have a vehicle, and my son refused to pick me up to be there for the labor at all or to see the baby in the hospital. But her parents got to see the baby and were in the parking lot the entire time. I called him while she was in labor a few times, but on the second day after her water broke, I called him and heard her snap at him to get off the phone, and he refused to accept any calls after that. I just wanted to know that the 3 of them were okay though. She was in the hospital 2 days after the C-section, and they wouldn't stop to visit me on their way home after the birth because she was hurting. Even though she had painkillers she could have taken and she didn't feel right, according to my son. This is when I became concerned she had PPD. My daughter ended up picking up her prescriptions and some groceries for them and got to see the baby that night. Her and B have a relationship that is apparently pretty good. I was supposed to visit a couple days after they got home, but she ended up insisting something was wrong, and went back to the doctor who apparently sent her to the hospital. My son told me they diagnosed her with postpartum preeclampsia, but I was pretty certain that that was only something that happened during pregnancy, and went away after birth, so I was pretty sure he was confused. The day after they admitted her again, 5 days after the baby being born with everyone meeting her but me, was my birthday. I called her around 8 that morning, to see what was really going on, but she didn't answer. A while later my son called me and wished me a happy birthday and asked why I had called B. I admit I snapped at him and said she should be returning my call, because I called her. I hung up on him and maybe 5 minutes later she called me. I told her she should have called me, and that I wanted to hear her voice and hear from her what was going on since my son gets confused. I then asked her if this was a mental or physical issue, and she went silent before saying physical. I asked if she was sure, and she got kind of snippy and said they had padding on her bed, because she was a seizure risk and she couldn't be alone with her newborn, so she was pretty sure. I didn't comment on her tone because I was sure she was stressed. She was released her the next day, and they came and visited me while I was at my daughter's watching her 2 kids, on their way home so I could see the baby. I offered her some pillows to sit on. My son said she basically gave birth both ways, even though I knew this wasn't true. I wondered if she had some soreness that made him think this, and she refused my hospitality saying she was fine and felt pretty good. 2 weeks later my son picked me up and brought me to their home to visit. I stayed for a few hours, and she didn't really make any effort to talk to me. She was just quiet and sat on the couch. When my son took me home I asked why she was so unhospitable, and he said I had been rude while she was in the hospital. That she shouldn't have had to call me, and that I shouldn't have asked if it was a mental or physical problem because he had already told me it was physical. He also said I shouldn't have posted anything on Facebook before her about the baby being born. And that I was rude when he called to make me take it down. She doesn't post on social media very often, so I didn't think it would be a big deal. He hasn't picked me up to see the baby because he says he needs to be there to help with the baby, and they won't bring the baby to me because he says the baby isn't allowed in my house. I told my son I'm planning to quit my job to babysit for them, but I haven't even gotten her return to work date and she hasn't once thanked me for doing it. Overall I feel like she's holding on to some very petty things and is using them to keep me from my son and granddaughters. I want a relationship with her, but I am missing some critical bonding time with the baby and I am going to struggle to forgive her for it. Especially over petty nonsense she won't even bring up to talk to me. I'm really wanting to send a text and lay all my feelings out for her and just hash it out, but I understand there are probably cultural differences at play with all of this too, so I could use some advice on what to say. Relevant comments. This whole exchange. Comment. Lady, if you don't pull your head out of your ass, you're not going to be part of their lives at all. You're not owed nearly any of what you seem to think you are. When it comes to their baby, they don't owe you crap. 1. Your son had 2 priorities when his wife was in labor. His wife and their baby. Not you. He didn't have time to come pick you up or talk to you on the phone. Have you ever heard of a taxi cab? 2. She shouldn't have to take a pain pill just so they can stop by and see you on their way home. How incredibly selfish of you. They did the right thing and went straight home. 3. Are you seriously questioning a doctor's diagnosis? Do you really think it's appropriate to ask her if it's physical or mental? Are you mental? 5. You're lucky anyone called you back at all. They are tired and are learning how to care for their newborn, and that is after your DIL had a complicated labor and delivery and complications after birth. No one has the emotional bandwidth to deal with your entitlement. 6. You inconvenienced your son and had him pick you up and drive you home. Again, taxi, Uber, Lyft were better options. Then you're complaining his wife, who is exhausted and still healing, was inhospitable. I'm guessing she was saying plenty to you in her head but was too polite to actually verbalize it. 7. Do they even want you babysitting their baby? Did they actually ask this of you, or did you just decree that this is what is happening? 8. You do not post baby news on Facebook without the parents' permission. You are rude and overstepping. 10. If you want to send them a text, send them a sincere apology for being a pushy. Entitled, pain in the ass and promise you'll behave better in the future. OP's response, I'm a grandparent and do deserve to be in my grandchildren's life. I also deserve not to have my eldest granddaughter turned against me. Saying they owe me nothing is incorrect, and courts would agree with that. I love them both, so I don't want it to come to that, but I am owed that. 1. If he would have came the first night before she was in real labor, he wouldn't have needed to talk to me. We don't have taxi cabs. And the Uber would have been well put of my budget. 2. She refused to take any of the painkillers once discharged, period. That was selfish of her. And I had food for them too, so my son wouldn't have had to cook. It wasn't just for me to see the baby. 3. No, I was questioning if my son had the right information. He's relayed wrong things before. 4. I understand that from her perspective after reading some of the comments. However, in my family it's just common to call back regardless, especially after having a baby. I see it's a cultural difference. 5. I can't Uber to where they live, otherwise I would be there every day. If that was an option I would have definitely jumped on it instead of having him pick me up. But Uber isn't either tiny town. 6. I told my son after I heard be telling my daughter about her struggle to find reputable daycare without a year-long wait and how she was scared for the safety of her baby. They won't have to worry if I watch her. 7. My son just said not to post pictures. I didn't realize announcing I was a grandma again would be a big deal. I deleted it. 8. I told my son I was sorry for hurting her feelings when he told me. I've always apologized to him when he's told me I've done something wrong in her eyes, whether I think it was wrong or not. I don't want to hurt her feelings ever. I want her to know she doesn't have to run to my son though, she can come to me. And I want a chance to explain myself to her. Comment, wait, you told them you were quitting your job to babysit. I told my son I would after I heard be telling my daughter about her struggle to find reputable daycare without a year-long wait and how she was scared for the safety of her baby. They won't have to worry if I watch her, it wouldn't be for free, and I own my house outright so I have no mortgage. I don't plan to live with them. I also had planned to watch my daughter's 2 children. But we currently are not on speaking terms, so I may get a part-time job for weekends to supplement my income a little bit, but either way I will be okay. One last gem from OP. I agree, she seems to have no respect for me being her mother-in-law. It's very disappointing. I'm astounded by all the people who don't feel that grandparents are needed in children's lives and that I'm simply owed nothing. Without me that child would not be here, and I don't think she realizes it. I wish my son had handled a lot of this differently. It feels like people believe children can be used as pawns when you don't agree with the grandparents. OP made another post on legal advice. 2 weeks later, I'm seeking advice on getting grandparent rights in Indiana. My son has 2 daughters with 2 different women. The oldest is 10, and he and her mother were never married, no custody agreement, they just have an informal agreement. The youngest is almost 2 months old, and he and her mother are married. I was under the impression that any grandparent could petition for custody/visitation in the US, but the way I'm reading it I can't unless my son is incarcerated or they aren't married. Is this correct? What do I need to do to seek joint custody of my granddaughters? What do I need to build a solid case? I've already tried resolving this without going this drastic, but his wife doesn't want to work with me. Commenters point out that she does not qualify for grandparents' rights in this scenario. She saw them at Christmas and they have to able parents. OP. I was under the impression that grandparents' rights were for when a parent is keeping a child from having a relationship with the grandparents. Visitation would be more than once every 3 months or once a month, wouldn't it? I don't feel like there is much of a relationship left with any of them to torpedo. So if I sacrifice a relationship with them to have a relationship with my granddaughters, that would be fine. People draw attention to her previous post and that she's angry her son moved out. I can't travel to them currently. If I could, I would be over there as often as I could be. I have apologized even though I don't think I was wrong. If she felt slighted by anything I said, I apologized for it. Really, though, I don't think it should matter. You don't use kids as pawns. I can have a relationship with my granddaughters without her, or I should be able to. That's what I thought grandparents' rights were for. To make sure parents couldn't stop an essential relationship with grandparents, without a damn good reason, like abuse, drug use, etc. Also, he didn't need my permission to move. I just didn't appreciate that he gave no indication he was leaving. I have apologized for everything she felt I did wrong, against my better judgment. I don't feel like I should have to continue to beg. My son says she's not preventing me from seeing them and appreciates my apologies, but but I still haven't seen my grandchildren. Update. Well, I apologized to my daughter-in-law for all the things my son listed. Since I had received feedback about it being my son's job to handle his family, I told him my apologies to pass along, and then I waited. However, I got no response from B. No thank you, no trying to bury the hatchet, nothing. So, last Friday I made an appointment with an attorney to discuss grandparents' rights. And had that appointment on Tuesday. The lawyer told me I had a good chance with my older granddaughter, but would likely get nowhere with the baby. I filled out some paperwork to get the process started, but Tuesday night I was questioning if I was doing the right thing. I called one of my friends to discuss, and was seriously considering not moving forward with it after talking to her. Then yesterday I received this message from B. This is B. I just wanted to let you know that friend told us you're intending to go for grandparent rights. And also shared everything you've had to say about me. Let me first say that I have not once kept the either of the girls from you, and I certainly have not kept son from you. He is a grown-ass man, and if he wanted to talk to you he was free to. You have not asked to come over and visit since son picked you up. You cannot expect us to 1, read your mind, or 2, drop everything and come pick you up. We have a new baby, and we have our own lives. I also have not said a word to you about what happened during delivery/postpartum, because I have no energy to argue with you. Son said you apologized, and I told him I appreciated it, even though it was not a real apology. You apologize for what you did to hurt my feelings. Not that my feelings were hurt. I don't have time for your drama. For the record, though, what you said was absolutely disgusting. I almost died. It had nothing to do with my mental health. Since you have decided to go for grandparents' rights, we will have no direct contact with you. All contact will need to go through our lawyer. You have been removed from my Facebook. You are not permitted to post any pictures you have been sent of my child on social media, and older granddaughter's mom feels the same way regarding older granddaughter. We intend to have something written up by our lawyers and sent to you by the end of the week regarding this, and ceasing contact with us. I assume we will be served with your visitation paperwork this week as well. You will get no pictures or phone calls going forward. In fact, you will be blocked. I also hope you realize you will absolutely lose this case. Your house is not suitable to live in, and you would have to be able to pass a drug test. When you lose, we will not resume contact with you. You lost your chance at being a part of our kids' lives by deciding to go to the most nuclear option instead of just communicating with us. End of message. I tried to respond to her and tell her that I didn't want to go through with it anymore, and I reacted pit of anger, but she wouldn't answer texts or calls, so I assume I really am blocked. I called my son to tell him about the text she sent, and he said he knew about it and it was a lot nicer than what he wanted to send me, so that's where I'm at this point. I'm going to show my lawyer the text so that it can show how unwilling to forgive and to work with me she is, and hopefully it will resolve quickly so I can at least get visitation rights with my oldest granddaughter. Relevant comments. The drug test. She says that I would have to pass a drug test. I use medical marijuana to help with a chronic illness, but it is still illegal where I live. I am quitting entirely since this is a possibility of getting in trouble. People point out that her daughter has cut her off as well. My daughter and I generally make up within a few months. I'm not really worried. She's also more capable to be a mother to her children than my son's wife and other mother are to their daughters with my son. YTF is your daughter a better mother? Because they need to have better cultural examples. For instance, the oldest mother is also not from our culture/race, and her hair is very different from her daughter's. She has no idea how to take care of her hair. It's always a mess. My daughter-in-law has taken some initiative in doing and styling her hair, but she's still not great at it. The girls need someone who can teach them how to handle basic things, like taking care of their skin and hair. Oldest hair has been something I have encouraged them to let me handle long before daughter-in-law came into the picture. Not taking care of a child's hair is a form of neglect. My daughter knows how to do those things because her hair and skin are much closer to theirs and she can handle it with her own children. No taxis, no bus. Their town is around 3,000 people. It's around 30 minutes by car, so I can't walk or bike there. I don't feel I deserve to be treated better, but equal. We are both equally important in my son's life. She is obviously more important in her daughter's life right now, but without me that baby wouldn't be here. I would drop the grandparents' rights case if I wasn't cut off. I reacted out of anger and desperation, but now it's the only option since I'm cut off. Note, OP has since deleted her account. Edit, a few people pointed out there is a post that seems like it is from the daughter's perspective on r/Justamil, titled, A Newborn, Reddit Posts and Grandparents' Rights, but owner of the post has requested it not to be reshared.